But anyways. All right, well, Pastor Frank asked me to preach this morning, and he asked me to speak on the subject of faith. And as I was praying and getting ready for this, God just downloaded a whole thing this week into my spirit. And I want to share this with you. And if you're taking notes, I entitled my message, A Change of Attitude. Having an attitude of faith. A change of attitude. You know, I'm 35 now, turning 36. Feel like I'm 50, but oh well. 3 kids, kind of, anyways. But one thing that I've learned over the years is this, that life has a lot less to do with what you go through and a lot more to do with the attitude in which you choose to go through life with. Because your attitude will change your situation, bottom line. Case in point is this, you can have 2 people go through the exact same situation, yet 2 people will come out on the other side completely different. It's a matter of attitude. It's a matter of the mental disposition. I was sharing this at the Whole Heart, a month and a half ago now, when we had the Ottawa Community Church here. An attitude is a mental position. I'm taking ground on this, and this is my attitude towards this, and I'm sticking to it. But an attitude works kind of like a filter. Because depending on your attitude, it will depend how you tend to view things. If you have a very negative attitude, it doesn't matter how good things are, you'll always see the negative side of it. If you have a bad attitude or a rotten attitude or a stinking attitude, that's what you'll see. You'll see the bad part. But if you have an attitude of faith, you'll tend to see the silver lining in things. If you have an attitude of faith, you'll tend to see God where no one else is able to see him. So the attitude you have in which you hold on to as you're moving through life can absolutely, completely change your outlook on life. Now, like I said, an attitude is like a filter in which through we view life. And just like social media, anybody here that has social media, especially Instagram, there's 3 reasons really as to why people use filters. The first reason is that we use a filter is we want to emphasize certain things. She wants to emphasize her eyes or her lips or whatever, I don't know, whatever. Or if you take photography of nature, you want a certain color to really pop. So you'll put a filter on to really emphasize and to bring a focal point to something. The second reason why we use filters is to bring about clarity. Maybe there's something that's out of focus or something that's just kind of hidden in the background, but you really want to bring it to the surface or something that's a little fuzzy, you want to sharpen it up. So a filter will help to do that. So it'll help you to emphasize certain things, and it will help you to clarify certain things that might not be so clear in the picture. And the third thing is we want to hide certain imperfections or certain things. So we'll kind of put on a filter to kind of hide, our X in the corner that we don't really like anymore. So we'll just, kind of put a dark filter on this side to kind of hide them or whatever. Or there's certain things that will, it's like, oh man, my hair's a mess. I'm going to blur it out so it doesn't really stand out, whatever. So those are the 3 reasons as to why we use filters: to bring emphasis, to bring clarity, and to hide certain imperfections. And an attitude does the exact same thing. Because an attitude of faith in the midst of hard times can help to bring an emphasis on what really matters. I don't really like what I'm going through right now, but God is still good. I don't really like what I'm going through right now, but God is still on the throne. I don't understand everything that's happening to me, but I'm taking an attitude of faith and saying that God is still good. It will bring about an emphasis on what really matters. You don't feel like God is there, but you know what? His word says he will never leave me or forsake me. I don't really feel like God is present, but his word says that he's our very present help in time of need. It will help you to focus on what really matters. The second thing that an attitude of faith will do is it will bring clarity in especially uncertain times. When things feel confused, you feel confused about certain things and things seem unsure. It's like, why is this happening to me? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why did that happen? Why am I still going through this? Why? An attitude of faith can help to bring clarity in your situation. Maybe there's something I haven't learned yet. Maybe that's why I'm still struggling with this. Maybe God is trying to teach me something. Maybe I've been praying for provision, but God can't be my provider if I'm not willing to be in need in the first place. Maybe God is trying to teach you something. We all want God to be the one that shuts the mouths of the lion, but none of us want to be thrown to the lion in the first place. Maybe God's trying to teach you something. And the last thing is, an attitude of faith can help to protect you and to hide certain things. That when negativity comes knocking at the door, when fear comes knocking at the door, when doubt and unbelief comes knocking at the door, an attitude of faith will say, you know what? I will not partake of you. I will not have anything to do with you. Negativity, get behind me. I will not, I was sharing with the first service, I'm notorious. I have a very bad, and I'm working on it, but I have a very bad self-narrative, inner narrative. I don't need anybody to tell me how bad I am in certain things. You tell me one thing that you don't like about me, I'll give you 10 I don't like about me. I got you beat. I don't need nobody to talk trash about me. I'm pretty good myself, but I'm working on it. But the thing is an attitude of faith says, you know what? I see this right now, but I believe what God says about me, that I am more than an overcomer, that I'm the head and not the tail, that I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. I will believe that. And an attitude can help you to filter out those things that God has not created for you to carry, such as negativity, doubt, fear, unbelief, self-hate. That's what an attitude does. And I want to encourage you this morning with this word to make sure that you get yourself an attitude of faith so that the things that come knocking at your door that are not of God and that shouldn't be there gets filtered out. And only through an attitude of faith will that ever happen. See, the attitude that you have while going through your situation will have the greatest impact and influence on how you come out of that situation. Now, the situation might never change or necessarily turn out the way that you specifically wanted it to, but depending on your attitude, it can help determine if you end up on top or crushed in defeat at the end of it. An attitude can help you with that. Today we're going to be taking a look at Exodus chapter 14. But before we jump into that, I'm going to give you a little bit of context because I do realize that we do live in a postmodern Christian world and that sometimes we'll kind of share some stories and assume that people have the education or the experience in the Bible to be able to fill in the gaps, but that is no longer the case. So very often we'll just kind of share a story and everybody's like, yeah, I know that story. I have no idea what that story is. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some context so that you know what's going on here. Exodus chapter 14 is where we pick up. And the scene is as follows. Let me backtrack a little bit. Moses is a gentleman that God chose. And by the way, I'm just going to give you the big, massive overview Snapchat. I'm not going to be able to give you all the details. If you want to know the details, just read the book of Exodus. Or if you're really lazy, you can go ahead and watch The Prince of Egypt by Disney. So now it will not give you a full accurate account, but it'll give you a nice snip. You know what? Just read the Bible, okay? But anyways, so Moses is chosen by God, and the Hebrew and the Israelites have been not in captivity, but in slavery in Egypt for almost 400 years, about 400 years. And they've been calling out to God and crying out to God, and God heard their cry. So God decides to raise up this guy by the name of Moses to be a deliverer for the people of Israel. So long story short, after a big argument with God, Moses finally decides to go and be obedient. And he goes and he challenges Pharaoh, which is the king of Egypt, and challenges Pharaoh and says, you got to let God's people go because we got to go to the promised land and we got to go worship in the wilderness and all that good stuff. To which Pharaoh says, absolutely not. Why would I let go of my workforce? So through a series of plagues that God brings upon the Egyptians, finally Pharaoh, dealing with the loss of a son due to one of the plagues, is frustrated, angry, and infuriated and sad, and finally lets the Israelites go and says, you know what, go, get out, go before I change my mind. And he finally doesn't just let them go, he pretty much kicks them out and says, you gotta go, get out. So they grab their family, wife, children, husbands, their cattle, their stuff, all their stuff, and they decide to leave. The Bible says, once you actually begin to kind of calculate the numbers and stuff, there was probably about anywhere between 1 to 5 million people, probably 2-3 million people. So they're all walking. But in this journey, they get to the point where there's the Red Sea in front of them and they can't go anywhere anymore. They know they're journeying, whatever, and then they get to the Red Sea and there's nowhere to go. But while they're in the middle of the journey, Pharaoh now has a kind of like epiphany. Is like, what have we done? We let our only workforce go. Who's going to build the pyramids for us now? So he goes and he's like, man, let's go. Gets his army and starts chasing after the Israelites. And this is where we pick up the story. The Israelites are now faced with the Red Sea in front of them. And then right behind them is a bloodthirsty, very angry army that wants their workers back. And this is where we pick up. Exodus chapter 14, verses 10 to 14 says, when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. And they feared greatly. Everybody says feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you've taken us out here to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Check their attitude here. They would have rather remained enslaved for the rest of their life than to get a shot at freedom, than to get a shot at being able to step into the promises of God. Having an attitude of faith and being able to walk into the promises of God is a lot of work. But your attitude can make the difference. Verse 13, and Moses said to the people, fear not. Everybody say, fear not. Fear not. Stand firm. Everybody say, stand firm. Stand firm. And see the salvation of the Lord. Everybody say, see the salvation of the Lord. Which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. For the Lord will fight for you, and you only have to be silent. See, I don't know the situation that you're in this morning. Maybe you feel like a little bit like the Israelites here in this historical account, where you feel like you're stuck between a hard and a rock place. A rock and a hard place. I said that backwards there. You know, maybe you feel like your marriage is really not doing good. Your kids are driving you nuts. Maybe you just lost your job. Maybe you're in the middle of losing your job. Maybe you got in an accident. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you're dealing with. Maybe your mental health has absolutely flared up during these lockdowns. Maybe it wasn't until these lockdowns that you realized that you struggled with mental health. I don't know what it is. I don't know what your situation is. I know what my situation is, but I don't know what yours is. And I believe that Moses has given us here some pretty decent advice as to how we can deal with our situations and how we can deal with whatever we're going through. See, whatever your situation, I would dare to say that the outcome of your situation could be completely different than where it is currently heading by simply applying an attitude change in your life and allowing God to help you see things the way that he does. See, what frustrated the Israelites here is that they couldn't see a way out. All they saw was what their physical eyes saw. They saw a sea in front of them, and they saw a very angry, bloodthirsty army behind them. That's all they saw, and they freaked out. And maybe for you, that's what your situation is. You see what's in front of you, you see what's behind you, and you don't see any way out. But I want to encourage you, if you would allow yourself to have an attitude of faith, you could see things very differently. Moses challenged the Israelites with their attitude, and God moved mightily in their behalf. Now here's the thing. Let it be known that just because they ended up changing their attitude, God didn't bring them directly in the promised land, which is where they were heading, by the way. But their attitude helped them to get moving in the right direction. And you having a change of attitude and you having a change of heart does not necessarily mean that whatever happened is going to get undone. That if you had an accident, that you're going to be able to rewind time and everything's going to be okay. If you had an injury, you're not going to be able to go back in time and everything's going to be okay. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you're going to get your job back or whatever happened is going to get undone. But what I'm saying is that it's at least going to direct you in the right direction and get you moving in the right direction and help you really in the end. Having an attitude change may not change your situation, but maybe you're the one that needs to change. What I've found over my 2 decades of being a follower of Christ, that sometimes God actually allows you to go through certain things in life. And while we're busy begging God to change our situation or take us out of our situation, God is simply being patient and waiting for you to allow him to bring a change in you. God, why are we stuck in the desert? God, why are we stuck here? Why are we stuck, with the sea in front of us and those guys in front of us? God, change the situation. I'm trying to change you. God, why aren't you here? Where are you? What's going on? I'm trying to prove myself as a provider to you right now, as a protector to you right now. Would you let me? And maybe you're still in the situation that you are because God is trying to teach you something. And I'm not saying God, whatever happened to you, God made it happen. I'm not saying that. But sometimes God will allow certain things to happen to us to try to change something in us. And while we want God to change the situation and we want a quick fix out of our situation, God says, no, I want to change you and I want to grow you. You know, being a Christian, I was listening to this video this week. Danielle, one of our worship leader here, sent me this video, and there was this thing that she said, and you know, a move of God sometimes may look like pain. A move of God sometimes may look like a painful thing. You know, and sometimes we come to God and we want everything to be sanitized, and we believe this whole North American Christianity thing where it's like, well, God just wants me to be happy. God just wants me to, you know, if God is good, then my life will be good all the time and nothing bad will ever happen. I'll never have a bad hair day. I wish. It doesn't work that way. Christianity is a lot of work. Christianity is not always safe. We want God to use us. We want God to do great things inside of us and through us, but we're not willing to go through anything. You know, like I said, we want God, you know, we want to meet God as our provider, but none of us are willing to be in need. We want God to be our healer, but you need to have a sickness or something in order for God to heal you. God's not going to heal you if there's nothing to be healed of. We all want to see God as the God that shuts the mouth of the lion, but none of us want to be thrown to the lion. Three things that Moses instructs the Israelite as they're going through this specific hard time, this specific situation, this specific storm that they're faced with. And I believe that those three advices that he gave the Israelites applies very much to us today as well. And the first thing is this. He says, fear not. Now, if you don't remember anything I've said this morning under this point, just remember this. If you fear, you can't trust God. Fear and trust cannot coexist. If you fear, if you allow fear in, you cannot trust God. Psalm 23 verse 4 says this, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Psalm 46 verses 46 verses 1 to 3. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of need. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7, for God gave us not a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Some verses will say, and a sound mind. I love what the author L.R. Nost said. She said this, fear and trust cannot coexist. We choose moment by moment, day by day, whether to use threats, force, coercion to satisfy our need for control and convenience in the short term, or to invest time, effort, and sacrifice that it takes to build a trust relationship that will last for a lifetime. Fear may control temporarily, but trust influences for life. And it's very hard to trust someone that you don't know. And the very reason why many of us are not able to trust God is because we don't know God. And therefore we will go towards fear. We'll freak out, not believing that God is who he says he is, and God will do and is capable of doing what he said he will do and is capable of doing. You want to build your trust to overcome your fear? Spend time with him. You cannot trust someone you don't know. So if you want to learn to trust God, guess what? Get to know him. And allow him to make himself known to you. If you fear, you can't trust God. Fear will keep you from trust, and trust will keep you from fear, will protect you from fear. See, fear is rooted in a lack of trust in who God says he is and what God says that he can do and will do. There's a quote by an anonymous person, I don't know who it is, but it says this, fear is unbelief parading in disguise. Fear is unbelief parading in disguise. See, you will never be able to overcome fear unless you can actually begin to acknowledge what fear really is. Fear is a lack of trust in God. Now, I'm not saying, hey, if you're scared and if you're fearful, especially in this season with COVID, if you're like, man, I'm scared, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying just stop it, you're bad. Just stop it. How dare you? Stop it, you sinner, stop it. I'm not saying that at all. Fear is a real thing. Fear is a legitimate thing. Rather, it's the reason why I'm saying this is because it's the fact that there will be plenty of opportunity in life for us to be scared and for us to have fear. And here's the thing, and if you don't deal with fear, you're not dealing with fear, guess what? It's just a matter of time until fear comes knocking at your door. Good morning. And unbelief and doubt will come knocking at your door. But here's the thing, just because fear, doubt, and unbelief comes knocking at your door, you are under no obligation whatsoever to open that door and to bow down to it. It's not about whether or not fear is going to come. Fear is going to come. And for many of us, fear has come. But you are under no obligation. Do not believe the lie that just because fear comes knocking at your door, that you got to bow down to it. That's when you got to trust God and you got to allow your spirit of faith, your attitude of faith to say, you know what, I'm going to filter that out. And I'm not going to bow down to fear. See, the reason why we're told over and over in the Bible, do not fear, do not fear, do not fear, do not fear, is because God knew how prone we would be to fear. So if you are dealing with fear right now, there's no condemnation. I'm not saying stop it, you're bad. But what I'm saying is, if you're sick and tired of living in fear, guess what? There is an answer. Spend time with Jesus. Build up your trust and your relationship. And I love that quote by L.R. Noss, I think it was, that, at the end of the day, it's about investing time. You want to build your trust? Invest time in reading the Word. Invest time spending time in His presence. Invest time being in the house of God, being in worship, being on your knees in prayer, calling out to Him. And guess what? The result of that will be a lifelong trust relationship with Him. So that next time fear comes knocking, you can just laugh at it and be like, go somewhere else. I love what Harry Emerson Fosdick said. He says this: fear imprisons, faith liberates. Fear paralyzes, but faith empowers. Fear disheartens, but faith encourages. Fear sickens, but faith heals. Fear makes useless, but faith makes serviceable. And most of all, fear puts hopelessness at the heart of life, while faith rejoices in its God. And if you want to get to the point where you can actually rejoice in your relationship with God, guess what? That is a result of having that trust relationship, because the moment you can actually begin to trust God, that He is who He says He is, and He will do whatever it says that He will do, that He will do whatever He said He will do, guess what? You can begin to rejoice whenever the storms come knocking, because you know what? My God is for me. I might not like what I'm going through. It might not even go out the way that I wanted to, but God is still good. God is still on the throne no matter what. And you can actually begin to take that stand. Isaiah chapter 41 verses 10 says this: fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. See, I love what Norman Vincent Peale said. The cure for fear is faith. The cure for fear is faith. And here's the thing. Fear is allowing your physical eye to begin to dictate the outcome of your situation based on what you see. But faith is allowing what you can't see to begin to dictate how things will turn out. Fear is allowing what you can see to dictate the outcome of your situation, but faith is believing that there's certain things that you just don't see, but that will bring about the best possible solution for that circumstance. To dare to believe that the best outcome is based upon what you can't see. The second thing is this: stand firm. The second thing that Moses says is stand firm. Are you guys still with me? You guys are way quieter than the first service. Freaking me out. Stand firm. If you don't stand firm, you will miss God. The first thing was, don't fear. If you allow fear in, you're pushing trust out. You cannot fear and trust at the same time. And the second thing is this: stand firm. If you don't stand firm, if you don't learn to stand your ground in what you believe in, you will miss God every time. You will miss God every time. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 58 says this, therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, be immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men and women, be strong. James chapter 1, verse 12, blessed is the man or woman who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. See, Moses told the people to stand firm and stand their ground. And even though the situation, this is an understatement, looked less than favorable, what you need to understand is that if they would have upped and left and freaked out and gone whatever way that they would have wanted, they would have completely missed out what God was about to do in that situation. They would have completely missed out the miracle that they were being set up to see and to witness. See, the Bible says that there was the river in front of them and there was soldiers behind them. It doesn't say there was anything on either side of them. They could have booked it and just kind of, catch me if you can type thing. But they didn't. And Moses said, stand firm. Stand firm. See, just because you don't understand what's going on right now does not mean that God doesn't know what he's doing. And it doesn't mean that God is not at work. And it does not mean that God is not there. Stand firm. Look at your neighbor and say, stand firm. And I wonder how many of us have completely missed out on the move of God because we decided to do the opposite of standing firm. That when the storm hits, the very things that could strengthen us, the very thing that could encourage us, the very thing that could stabilize us is the very thing we turn our back on. I don't know how many times I've seen this. I've been in ministry for over 15 years now, and I've seen it over and over and over again, where the storm hits, the waves are way bigger than they think they can handle. The brown smelly stuff hits the fan at home or at work or whatever, and then the first thing they do, they stop serving, they stop coming to church, they stop going to small group, they stop praying, they stop reading the Bible, they stop working. The very things that could actually help you weather the storm is the very thing that they turned their back on. See, God was about to do a miracle right there in the Red Sea that was right in front of them. If they would have moved out and if they would have went out, they would have completely missed what God was about to do. They would have completely missed it. See, when the storm hits, the very thing you should do is hunker down and dig into the Word. The very thing you ought to do is get on your knees and begin to call out and cry out to the Lord. The very thing you ought to do is remain faithful in your giving, remain faithful in your church attendance, remain faithful in your small group attendance. Why? Because those are the things that can help you weather the storm. Look at your neighbor and say, stand firm. See, I don't know about you, but many people, like I said, this whole pandemic thing, whatever, has really flared up the mental health. Or for some of us, we never knew we had mental health issues until the lockdown hits and until this thinking pandemic thing happened. I don't think I can handle another lockdown. I'm just saying. Whoever's making whoever's making these rules clearly don't have 3 kids under the age of 6. I'll just say that. They might reconsider if they did. But going through this lockdown, especially the first one back in March 2020, it's taught me that I'm not as patient as I thought I was. I'm not as nice as I thought I was. My children brought a lot of things to the surface in my life. But I had 2 options. Either blame my kids or get on my knees and say, God, I need help. When the storm hits, what do you do? What are you prone to do? What's your first reaction? Do you run from God or run to Him? Because if you have an attitude of faith, guess what? You will run as close to God as you can. And that's why Moses is telling them that. Stand firm. David Sarnoff said this, the will to perseverance is often the difference between failure and success. F.R. Andrews said this, great faith is not the faith that walks always in the light and knows no darkness, but the faith that perseveres in spite of God's seeming silences. Gosh, I love that. And that faith will most certainly and surely get its rewards. William Barclay says this: endurance is not just the ability to bear a hard thing, but to turn it into glory. If I could get the worship team to come back, that'd be great. And my third point is this: wait and see. And if you don't remember anything from this point, remember this: if you don't learn to be patient and to wait on the Lord, you won't be able to see the Lord. If you let fear in, you can't trust God. If you don't learn to stand your ground, you will miss God. And if you don't learn to wait upon Him, you won't be able to see Him. Isaiah 40 verse 31 says this: but they who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Psalm 27 verses 13 and 14 says this: I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Let's just do the chorus and the bridge. Psalm 130 verse 5 says this: I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in His word I hope. You know what I think is the issue sometimes, very often actually, is that God doesn't move as fast and as quickly as we want Him to. Sometimes God is just a little slow for a taste, you know. Why am I still going through this? Why is it still happening? Why aren't I over this by now? Why am I still single? My mom keeps telling me I'm special and good looking, but why am I still single? Some of you, that's a real challenge. I'm just saying. But God, why aren't I married by now? God, why don't I have a house by now? God, why don't I have this by now? Why am I still in school? Why don't I have a job? Why blah, 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 blah. It can go on and go on and go on and go on. See, the problem with our society is we want everything yesterday. You know, the issue with that is this. By trying to take things into our own hands instead of waiting God to do His part, we can actually completely short circuit the miracle that God was setting us up for. And then you know what we do? It's so good. You know what we do? And then we have the audacity to blame God for the mess that we created because we were impatient, not wanting to wait for God to do His part in His timing. Well, God is not good. Well, God is, absent. God is this, God is that. We blame God for all these messes that we've created. We jump the gun and we date someone just because we, instead of waiting for God to direct us to someone, we bring someone to God and say, is she okay, God? Is he okay, God? And then we get in trouble and we're in a relationship we don't want to be because we jump the gun and blame God. Well, God, where were you, when I started dating that person or whatever? I'm just using that as an example because I've seen it over and over and over and over and over again. I'm going to say something that will either frustrate you, which, whatever, or something that will free you. The choice is yours, really. God is under no obligation whatsoever to abide by your timeline. None whatsoever. Christian life is not about God abiding to our rules and allowing His will to line up with ours. It's the other way around. And you either allow Him to be God and allow Him to be king or not. But the choice is yours. But if you have an attitude of faith, you'll be able to filter that out and say, God, I submit to you. I don't like it, but I submit to you. And the other issue is this, is that a lot of us, I know this is cheesy, whatever, I've said it 1,000 times, other people have said it, whatever, but we all want a testimony, but none of us want the test. And we want God to use us, but, I don't want to be uncomfortable, or, we care more about our comfort than about His glory. That's a dangerous place to be. How many of you guys like Chronicles of Narnia? You've read it, seen the movies, whatever. C.S. Lewis, amazing author. I'm trying to read the story to my daughter right now. I'm just like, Daddy, this is boring. There's no pictures. I said, honey, this is a movie. So let's read this and then we'll go through it. Fine. So I'm trying to read her. Chronicles of Narnia. But in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, there's a line where Lucy, this young girl Lucy, one of the characters, finds her way into Narnia, and then she finds out about this character named Aslan, which is a representation of who Jesus is and representation of Jesus. And one of the, she finds out that Aslan is actually a lion. He's a lion, and to which she says, "Oh, a lion? Is he quite tame? Is he?" I'm talking with an English accent. Is he? I'm trying to read the story and I'm doing all the accents. Is he tame? Is he quite safe? Safe? Who said anything about safe? He's not safe, but he is good. And if you're looking for a safe life and a safe faith, Christianity is not for you. Because if you're really truly surrendered to his will, you will go through whatever in order for him to get the glory. V.H. Vanstone said, and I'm going to finish with these two quotes, talking about Jesus. He went to the Garden of Gethsemane to wait upon the outcome. Waiting can be the most intense and poignant of all human experiences. The experience which above all others strips us of our needs, our values, and of ourselves. In the Bible, does it say over and over, wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord? Because in the waiting, you realize your need for him. In the midst of the waiting, you finally find the end of yourself in order to begin to find the beginning of God. Vance Havner said this, simply wait upon the Lord. In doing so, we shall be directed, supplied, protected, corrected, and rewarded.